The galactic forces touched down on Earth, their sleek ships slicing through the humid atmosphere of the planet's tropical jungle. They had conquered countless worlds, and to them, Earth was no different. The towering trees and dense vegetation were nothing more than a minor inconvenience in their eyes, obstacles to be swept aside by their superior technology. The alien commanders stood tall, observing the landscape with disdain. They were the masters of the galaxy, their advanced weapons and tactics undefeated in countless battles. A sense of superiority coursed through the ranks as they spread out, deploying their advanced scouting drones. These machines, designed to detect threats and map out terrain, buzzed into the thick greenery, transmitting live feeds to the command center. The alien leaders scoffed at the primitive jungle, laughing among themselves. Earth, they thought, was defenseless. The fact that humans had relied on this jungle to protect themselves showed just how backward they were. The idea that nature could pose any kind of threat to their advanced machinery was laughable. As the troops moved deeper into the jungle, their confidence grew. The drones detected no immediate danger. The ground beneath them was silent, save for the occasional rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. To the galactic forces, this was just another easy conquest. They mocked Earth's reliance on such an untamed wilderness, convinced that their technology would render it harmless. Yet, unknown to them, the jungle was already testing them. The humidity in the air began to interfere with their sensitive equipment, something the galactic forces hadn't anticipated. Their drones, despite being designed to withstand harsh environments, started to glitch. Minor, at first. A short delay in transmission, a flicker in the video feed. The commanders shrugged it off. What harm could a little moisture do? The alien troops, armed with the latest energy weapons and clad in impenetrable armor, pressed on. They continued to joke about Earth's backwardness, laughing at the planet's defense systems, or lack thereof. They had conquered planets with far more hostile environments, worlds filled with lava flows and acid rains. This jungle, with its humid air and overgrown plants, was laughable in comparison. Yet, as they moved deeper, things began to go wrong. A squad sent to clear a path ahead stopped responding. At first, the command center chalked it up to a communication glitch. But when a second team sent to investigate also went silent, the atmosphere shifted. What had once been a mission filled with overconfidence was now tinged with unease. The commanders sent out more drones, their mechanical eyes scanning the dense foliage for signs of life. Yet the only thing they picked up were plants, nothing unusual, nothing to suggest an enemy force. Still, the silence from their soldiers was unsettling. The commanders ordered a tactical retreat for their frontline squads, but even those commands went unanswered. The galactic forces were now faced with an uncomfortable truth: they were in the dark. Their equipment, once flawless, was failing them in the most basic ways. They couldn't communicate with their troops, and they couldn't locate them either. And the jungle, which had seemed so harmless just hours before, now felt like an endless maze, swallowing their soldiers one by one. Unknown to the invaders, a much more intelligent force was observing them from within the trees. Hidden from view, Earth's Delta Force watched silently, studying their every move. These human soldiers had trained for this moment for years, learning the ways of the jungle, becoming one with the very environment the aliens now mocked. They knew that patience was their greatest weapon. So they waited, allowing the jungle to disorient the invaders before they struck. The galactic forces, still oblivious to the Delta Force's presence, continued to send search parties into the jungle, each one disappearing without a trace. The commanders, growing frustrated, ordered an all-out sweep of the area. Drones filled the sky, their sensors on full alert. But the jungle, dense and thick with life, hid the Delta Force well. The aliens had relied too much on technology, and it was failing them in the one place where it mattered most. The once confident ranks of the galactic forces were now on edge. Soldiers whispered amongst themselves, nervously glancing into the trees as if expecting something, or someone, to leap out. The jungle, which had once seemed still and quiet, was now alive with unfamiliar sounds. Every snap of a branch, every rustle of leaves sent a wave of anxiety through the ranks. They were far from home, far from their controlled environments, and it was beginning to show. Then, without warning, a squad of alien soldiers was taken out. No explosions, no firefight, just silence. One moment they were there, the next they weren't. The jungle had claimed them, and the Galactic forces had no idea how. The commanders, now fully aware that something more than the jungle was working against them, ordered a lockdown. All remaining troops were to regroup, but their arrogance had already cost them. Earth was no easy conquest, and this jungle, this primitive stretch of land, was proving to be far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The Galactic forces pushed deeper into the jungle, unaware that the landscape was slowly turning against them. Their once reliable tech had begun to falter, with drones failing mid-flight and communication systems breaking down. The oppressive heat and humidity were wreaking havoc on their equipment, but the commanders pressed on, unwilling to accept that a simple environment could be their undoing. They had conquered worlds with far greater challenges. This jungle was supposed to be no different. Yet, with each step, their control over the situation slipped further. Without warning, a drone crashed into the dense foliage, its sensors scrambled by the sheer volume of interference in the air. The troops on the ground, no longer receiving real-time data, stumbled blindly through the thick underbrush. The jungle, previously seen as a mere annoyance, now loomed like a predator waiting for its moment to strike. Their once sharp formation began to break apart, soldiers falling behind or wandering off course, unable to see more than a few feet ahead. In the shadows, the Delta Force remained unseen. They watched in silence, waiting for the perfect moment to act. These elite human soldiers had spent years honing their skills, blending into the natural environment, and using the jungle as their greatest ally. They didn't need drones or scanners. They trusted their instincts and the knowledge they had of the terrain. Patience was their weapon, and they knew the longer they waited, the more vulnerable their enemies would become. The first real blow came quietly. A squad of alien soldiers, isolated from their main group, found themselves surrounded by an invisible force. They had no warning, no indication that they were being hunted. One by one, they were picked off with such precision that their comrades didn't even notice they were gone until it was too late. By the time the rest of the squad realized what had happened, they were already surrounded, the Delta Force having moved in and out of the shadows with lethal efficiency. Panic began to spread through the ranks of the Galactic forces. What they had thought was a routine mission was quickly becoming a nightmare. Their commanders tried to re-establish order, barking commands into malfunctioning radios, but the jungle seemed to swallow every word. The alien troops, so used to relying on technology, found themselves utterly helpless without it. They had mocked Earth's defenders for relying on primitive tactics, yet now those very tactics were their undoing. As night fell, the situation worsened. The jungle came alive with sounds, creatures moving in the underbrush, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of unknown animals. Every noise was magnified in the darkness, sending shivers through the already anxious soldiers. They clutched their weapons tighter, unsure whether they were defending themselves against the jungle or something far more dangerous. The Delta Force, well versed in night operations, used the cover of darkness to their advantage. They struck again, this time more aggressively, disabling vehicles and cutting power to key systems. The Galactic forces, unable to see their attackers or anticipate their moves, could only retreat further into the jungle, where the terrain became even more treacherous. Their energy weapons, designed for long-range combat, were useless in such close quarters. The thick vegetation absorbed the blasts, and the tight paths between trees made it nearly impossible to aim properly. Frustration turned to fear as the alien troops realized they were outmatched not just by the humans, but by the very environment itself. The jungle was no longer just a setting, it had become an enemy in its own right, working alongside the Delta Force to dismantle the once mighty invaders. Back at the command center, the alien leaders were at a loss. Reports came in sporadically, often incomplete or cut off mid-sentence. They had lost nearly half their scouting units without a single shot being fired. For all their advanced technology, they couldn't seem to overcome the simplest of obstacles. And worse, they couldn't see their enemy. The Delta Force had become ghosts, using the jungle to mask their movements, leaving no trace behind after each strike. The Galactic commanders, who had once laughed at Earth's primitive defenses, were now scrambling to figure out how to survive. Desperation set in. The commanders ordered an immediate fallback to higher ground, hoping to gain some visibility over the dense jungle floor. But even this maneuver proved disastrous. As they ascended, their equipment continued to fail. The higher elevation didn't provide the vantage point they had hoped for, only more confusion as they found themselves even more exposed to the relentless tactics of the Delta Force. Now, completely out of their element, the alien soldiers were left with no choice but to huddle together in defensive positions, hoping to hold out until reinforcements arrived. But the Delta Force wasn't about to let them regroup. Moving swiftly and silently, they cut off supply lines, ensuring that no food, water, or additional resources reached the struggling invaders. Each move was calculated, each strike designed to further weaken the galactic forces without risking open conflict. The aliens, who had expected to conquer Earth in a matter of days, were now facing a slow and humiliating defeat at the hands of an enemy they couldn't even see. By the time the galactic forces realized they were being hunted, it was already too late. Their arrogance had blinded them to the real threat: humans who had mastered the art of using the environment to their advantage. The jungle, once mocked as primitive and harmless, had become the ultimate weapon, and the Delta Force, unseen and unstoppable, had turned the invaders' confidence into their downfall. The alien commanders, once so sure of their superiority, were left with no choice but to admit that Earth's defenders were far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. The Delta Force had waited long enough. With the galactic forces in complete disarray, it was time to strike. The humans had used the jungle to their advantage, watching their enemies grow weaker with each passing hour. Now they would move in for the kill, systematically taking out key targets and crippling what was left of the alien invasion force. The Delta Force operated with military precision, their actions swift and calculated. Each member knew their role, and each step was planned. They didn't need complex technology or heavy firepower. Instead, they relied on their training, their instincts, and their deep understanding of the jungle. The galactic forces had underestimated Earth's elite soldiers, believing that without advanced weaponry, humans stood no chance. That arrogance would now cost them everything. The first targets were the alien commanders. Without their leadership, the already fragile morale of the troops would collapse completely. The Delta Force knew that cutting off the head of the operation was key to their success. Moving silently through the underbrush, they approached the command center, which had been hastily relocated to a higher vantage point in a last-ditch effort to gain some control over the situation. But control was the last thing the aliens had left. In the dead of night, the Delta Force executed their plan flawlessly. They infiltrated the command center without raising a single alarm. Within moments, the alien commanders were neutralized, taken out before they even knew they were under attack. The Delta Force left no trace of their presence, disappearing back into the jungle as quickly as they had come. The remaining alien soldiers, now leaderless and confused, were left to fend for themselves. Panic spread like wildfire through the alien ranks. Without direction, the troops turned on each other, some breaking rank and attempting to flee into the jungle, only to be swallowed up by the very environment they had mocked. Others tried to regroup, but without proper communication or leadership, their efforts were futile. The Delta Force, still watching from the shadows, struck again and again, never allowing the aliens a moment to recover. With each passing hour, the alien forces grew weaker. Their advanced technology was useless in the face of such relentless guerrilla tactics. They had no idea where the next attack would come from, and they couldn't predict how to defend against it. The Delta Force moved like shadows, using the jungle to mask their every move. The aliens were now prisoners of the environment, trapped and hunted by an enemy they couldn't even see. The alien troops had been reduced to small, scattered groups, huddled together in makeshift camps, their once powerful energy weapons now useless against an enemy that refused to engage them head-on. Supplies were running out, and morale had plummeted. The soldiers, once proud and confident, were now paranoid and desperate, jumping at every sound, every rustle in the leaves. They had come to conquer, but now they were simply trying to survive. The Delta Force showed no mercy. They knew that hesitation could cost them everything. This was their home, their jungle, and they would not let the invaders take it. Every strike was precise, every move planned. The aliens were falling apart, their forces crumbling with each new attack. What had once been an elite invasion force was now little more than a group of lost soldiers, desperately clinging to life in a hostile environment they could never hope to understand. The alien commanders had believed that technology would win the day, but they had failed to understand that this battle was never about weapons or machines. It was about survival, and the Delta Force had mastered the art of survival long ago. The jungle was their greatest weapon, and they wielded it with skill and precision, using it to break the spirits of their enemies. As the days dragged on, the alien forces dwindled. Many had already perished, victims of both the jungle and the Delta Force's relentless assaults. Those who remained were weak, exhausted, and terrified. They knew they couldn't hold out much longer. The Delta Force, still unseen, continued to strike with ruthless efficiency, giving the aliens no chance to regroup or defend themselves. It became clear that the Galactic forces were no longer a threat. They had been reduced to mere survivors, scattered and broken. The Delta Force had won without ever engaging in a traditional battle. They had outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outlasted the invaders, using the jungle to their advantage in ways the aliens could never have imagined. In the end, the Galactic forces, once so certain of their victory, were utterly defeated. Their technology had failed them, their tactics had crumbled, and their arrogance had been their downfall. The jungle had claimed them, and the Delta Force had delivered the final blow. The alien invaders, who had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, were now nothing more than a memory, swallowed by the very world they had sought to dominate. The Delta Force, having completed their mission, disappeared back into the jungle, leaving no trace of their presence. Earth remained unconquered, its defenders proving once again that human resilience and adaptability could overcome even the most advanced invaders. The Galactic forces had mocked Earth's jungles, but in the end, they had been hunted and defeated by the very land they had thought would be easy to tame. The Galactic forces were on their last legs, their numbers decimated and their once formidable fleet reduced to wreckage scattered across the jungle. The remaining soldiers, leaderless and desperate, had formed a fragile defensive perimeter. They were exhausted, starving, and terrified. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every rustle of leaves a signal of impending doom. The Delta Force had whittled them down to this state, not through brute force, but by using the very land they had mocked as their greatest weapon. The jungle had become a nightmare for the Galactic soldiers. Their advanced technology, once their greatest strength, had become a burden. The thick canopy blocked their sensors, the humidity corroded their equipment, and the creatures of the jungle picked off stragglers without mercy. They had believed they could conquer Earth easily, yet they hadn't counted on Earth's defenders knowing every inch of the terrain and how to use it against them. The Delta Force had proven that skill and knowledge could overcome technology and arrogance. Despite their weakened state, the Galactic forces still held on to a sliver of hope. Reinforcements had been called for, though none had come. Their communications were mostly down, but intermittent signals had gotten through. They held out hope that their superiors would send help, that their mighty fleet would descend from the skies and rescue them from this disaster. But deep down, the remaining soldiers knew that no help was coming. They were alone, stranded in an alien jungle that was slowly swallowing them whole. The Delta Force, observing from the shadows, knew the aliens were finished. What remained was simply a matter of cleaning up the last of the resistance. The aliens had lost their will to fight. They were no longer the arrogant, mocking force that had landed on Earth days before. They were broken, fearful, and demoralized. They no longer saw Earth's jungles as a primitive obstacle, but as an untamable force that had turned their confidence into fear. The final strike was swift and decisive. The Delta Force moved in, using the same guerrilla tactics that had brought the Galactic forces to their knees. There was no grand battle, no heroic last stand. The aliens were too broken to mount any real defense. The Delta Force dismantled their remaining defenses with surgical precision, targeting key supply points, disabling remaining vehicles, and neutralizing the few soldiers still capable of fighting. What had started as an invasion had ended in a quiet, methodical extermination. In the chaos, the alien soldiers scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Without their commanders, without their tech to guide them, they were helpless. They had never imagined that humans, whom they saw as primitive beings, could fight with such lethal precision. They had underestimated Earth's ability to fight back, and that mistake had cost them dearly. The jungle, the very environment they had mocked, was now their undoing. It hid their enemies, disrupted their systems, and wore them down until they were nothing more than terrified survivors. As the last of the alien resistance crumbled, the galactic forces were left with nothing. Their communication systems were destroyed, their escape routes cut off, and their morale shattered. The Delta Force had ensured that not a single alien would leave the jungle alive. The aliens, once the masters of countless worlds, had been outmatched by Earth's defenders in every possible way. They had never stood a chance. In the end, the jungle reclaimed everything. The wreckage of alien ships, the bodies of fallen soldiers, all disappeared beneath the thick canopy, swallowed by the very land they had come to conquer. The galactic forces were gone, wiped out by the combined efforts of Earth's elite soldiers and the unforgiving terrain they had foolishly underestimated. The jungle, once mocked as primitive, had proven to be far more powerful than the invaders could have ever imagined. The Delta Force, having completed their mission, melted back into the jungle as silently as they had come. They left no trace of their presence, no sign of the battle that had taken place. To the outside world, it was as if the galactic forces had simply vanished, lost to the depths of Earth's untamed wilderness. The human soldiers, victorious without ever engaging in open warfare, knew they had protected their home in the most effective way possible, by outsmarting, outlasting, and overpowering their enemies without giving them the fight they had expected. The galactic forces, in their arrogance, had never understood the strength of the human spirit, nor the power of a world that could fight back in ways they couldn't predict. They had come to Earth to conquer, but they had left defeated, their technology useless in the face of nature and human resilience. The jungle, the very place they had mocked, had become their graveyard, and the Delta Force had made sure they would never forget the mistake they had made. In the aftermath, the jungle returned to its peaceful state. The birds called out from the trees, the leaves rustled in the wind, and the world moved on, as if nothing had happened. But deep within the dense foliage, the memories of the battle remained. Earth had been defended, not by overwhelming force, but by the cunning and precision of its soldiers and the unforgiving strength of its environment. The galactic forces had underestimated Earth, and in doing so, they had sealed their fate. They would be remembered not as conquerors, but as the invaders who had fallen victim to the very land they sought to claim. The jungle had gone quiet. The galactic forces were gone, their ships reduced to debris, their soldiers either dead or lost to the vast expanse of the wilderness. The Delta Force had done their job flawlessly, without a single casualty on their side. From all appearances, the battle was over. Earth had been defended, and the invaders had been destroyed. Yet, beneath the calm, something else was stirring, a final, unforeseen twist that no one had expected. As the Delta Force began to retreat into the shadows of the jungle, their mission seemingly complete, they noticed something strange. A low hum began to emanate from deep within the forest, a sound they hadn't heard before. The air around them grew heavier, thicker, almost as if the jungle itself had changed. The soldiers, always alert, quickly scanned the area, but the source of the sound wasn't coming from the trees or the usual wildlife. It was coming from below. Beneath the jungle floor, hidden just out of sight, a backup plan had been activated. The galactic forces, always planning for contingencies, had embedded a failsafe in their invasion plan. Deep underground, a hidden alien bunker had remained undetected, housing an AI-driven unit, designed to adapt and take control of the situation if the primary invasion force failed. And now, with the surface forces decimated, this dormant AI had been triggered. Without warning, the ground began to shake. Hidden doors, covered by layers of soil and vegetation, slid open, and sleek, silent drones emerged from the Earth. Unlike the previous Galactic Forces soldiers, these were not biological. They didn't need food, water, or air. They didn't fear the jungle. They had no weaknesses to exploit. The Delta Force had defeated the Invaders, but they now faced something far more dangerous, a force that couldn't be intimidated, hunted, or worn down. The Delta Force immediately went on high alert. They had trained for every scenario, but this was different. The enemy was no longer vulnerable to their knowledge of the terrain. These new machines operated with a cold, unfeeling efficiency, guided by a powerful AI that had learned from the Galactic Force's failures. It had been watching, adapting, waiting for the right moment to emerge. And now, it was ready. The drones spread out, their sleek forms cutting through the dense underbrush with ease. Unlike the previous invaders, they didn't rely on cumbersome machinery that faltered in the jungle. They moved swiftly and silently, scanning the area for any sign of human presence. The Delta Force, always cautious, realized they were now the ones being hunted. They had lost the element of surprise, and the jungle, their greatest ally, was no longer enough to protect them. But the Delta Force didn't back down. They knew the terrain better than anything that could be programmed into an AI. Their experience, their instincts, and their understanding of the jungle still gave them an edge. While the drones had the advantage of technology, the humans had something far more powerful: adaptability. They could think, react, and improvise in ways no machine could. Using their knowledge of the terrain, the Delta Force began to lead the drones into traps. While these machines were fast, they couldn't adapt to the unpredictable movements of the humans. The soldiers lured them into areas of thick vegetation where the drone's sensors were limited. Improvised explosives set among the dense roots and vines caught several drones off guard, taking them out in swift, calculated strikes. However, the AI overseeing the drones was learning too. Each trap, each ambush, was analyzed in real time. The surviving drones began to adjust, attacking from different angles, moving faster, more strategically. The Delta Force knew they had to end this quickly. The longer the battle dragged on, the more the AI would learn, and the harder it would be to defeat. In a bold move, the Delta Force decided to go after the source of the problem, the underground bunker itself. They realized that as long as the AI remained intact, it would continue to send waves of drones after them, adapting to every tactic they used. The only way to stop the drones was to destroy the AI at its core. Moving through the jungle with the precision they were known for, the Delta Force located the hidden entrance to the bunker. It was heavily fortified, with layers of alien technology guarding it. But the soldiers weren't deterred. They planted charges, using everything they had left to breach the underground facility. Inside, the bunker was a stark contrast to the wild jungle above. It was cold, metallic, and sterile, a sharp reminder of the technological superiority of the Galactic Forces. At the center of the room sat the AI core, glowing with a menacing red light. The Delta Force moved quickly, planting explosives around the core, knowing they had only moments before the drones realized what was happening. As the final charges were set, the AI, in a last-ditch effort, activated every remaining drone in the area. The jungle outside came alive with the sound of machines closing in on their location. But the Delta Force didn't flinch. They had come too far to fail now. With one final push, they detonated the charges, destroying the AI core in a blinding explosion. The drones outside, now disconnected from their central control, fell silent. Without the AI to guide them, they were nothing more than lifeless machines, scattered across the jungle floor. The battle was over, and this time, there was no hidden backup plan, no last-minute surprise. The Galactic Forces had been completely defeated. The Delta Force, victorious once again, emerged from the bunker as the jungle returned to its natural state. The quiet of the wilderness enveloped them once more, a stark contrast to the chaos of the battle they had just fought. They had defended Earth, not once but twice, proving that no matter the enemy, biological or mechanical, human resilience, adaptability, and determination would always prevail.